This module within the Foundations course is titled The City Library Team and Support Organizations. I'm Bonnie McEwen, consultant with the Northwest District Office of the State Library. You're welcome to contact me with any follow-up questions regarding this class. You can refer back to this slide for my contact information, or you can find me from the Contact Us link on the State Library's website. In this module, we'll look at the major players on the City Library team by looking first at the role of the city government in library operations. We'll talk about the important role of the library board, director, and staff, and even community members who have contributions to be made toward the library's success. And finally, we'll point to important state and national organizations that support the work of libraries in cities large and small. Before looking specifically at the city library team in terms of their areas of responsibility, let's look first at an organizational chart to get a better visual at these typical team players and their relationship to each other. This sample is from the Dyersville Public Library. Maybe your library has something similar? It's worth looking for. It could be that the smallest of libraries with a one-person staff might think, I can skip this step, I'm only one person, I don't supervise anyone else. But I might push back on that for just a bit, because even the one-person library, when that person is the director, could very well be supervising volunteers. So again, because this is such a nice visual look at relationships, this can be helpful as an orientation for newly hired staff and equally helpful for newly appointed board members. So on to the city's role in the library's operation. A past city council would have established the library in your town decades ago, and I'll have more to say about the ordinance in just a bit. In Iowa's libraries, people serve on the library board through an appointment and approval process. When city residents express an interest in serving on the library board, the mayor appoints city residents, and those people are approved by the city councils. But rural county members are also eligible to serve on city library boards. When rural county members express an interest in serving, the mayor also appoints those people, but in those cases, then it's the county supervisors who make the appointments. Cities determine the annual appropriation to the library and to all other city services. So city governments are determining from their general fund the total annual appropriation to the library's budget, and county governments are doing likewise. County governments determine the total amount of rural tax dollars that they will allocate toward the library's budget. So these two sources taken together make up the majority of the library's budget. Because city clerks handle the library's bookkeeping, like accepting invoices for payment, issuing the checks, sending those payments to vendors, then the city clerk also has the responsibility to provide monthly financial reports to the board. These monthly financial statements are likely spreadsheets showing the beginning budget, how much has been spent month to date, year to date, and how much money remains. And finally, it's very common for libraries to follow personnel policies that have been approved by the council for other city workers, since library staff are also city workers. Following the city's personnel decisions makes good policy sense for the library, and it relieves the library board from working through often complex HR issues on their own. Now back to the city library ordinance. Your own ordinance will read very similarly to this example on the screen. From this example, you'll see that the library ordinance addresses the composition of the library board, which essentially is the total number of trustees who are serving on your board. Now, state law allows for either 5, 7, or 9 members on your board. Look to your city library ordinance to show you what number was chosen for your library. State law allows for a mix of city residents and rural residents, as I mentioned, to be appointed to the board. Look to your city library ordinance to see what that mix is between city and county residents who are serving on your library board. State law allows for trustees to be appointed for 6-year terms. And finally, the library ordinance clearly shows the charge of a library board. In other words, their powers and duties. State law sets up Iowa library boards with administrative authority over the library's operation, meaning that the majority of Iowa libraries, with only a very few exceptions, the majority of Iowa library boards are governing boards, not advisory. Again, only a handful of exceptions to that. Administrative authority gives Iowa library boards a great deal of decision-making over library operations. But even with that level of authority, library boards are public bodies. They cannot operate outside the law. They must comply with local, state, and federal law. And they must be accountable, always accountable for spending tax dollars. The State Library encourages you to find and read your own library ordinance. You should find a copy of it at your library, certainly at City Hall. If needed, you're welcome to contact the State Library for a copy. We have nearly all of them on file, and it's a very important document to review from time to time with your board. That's a lot of information about your ordinance, but I need to share one more really important point about making any changes to your library ordinance. This slide shows a very significant sentence that's highlighted in yellow. A proposal to alter the composition, the manner of selection, or the charge of a library board is subject to the approval of the voters, which means if you wanted to increase or decrease the number of board members, if you wanted to change that mix of city versus rural representation on your board, if you wanted to shorten the trustees' terms from a 6-year term to something less than 6, and if there were any effort to try to divest the board of any of its administrative authority, all of those changes are so significant that they can only be done through a public vote at a city election. So says Iowa Code 392.5, as shown here on the screen. You're welcome to contact the state library. We would encourage you to do so if you experience any of these proposed changes to your board structure. We're here to help you answer those kinds of questions. Now it's on to the board's role in library operations. The Iowa Library Trustees Handbook you see on the slide, the 2020 edition, includes 5 major areas of board responsibility. Remember the phrase administrative authority? That's what library boards have in Iowa in the vast majority of cities and towns, and this is what's meant by administrative authority. Our library boards hire a qualified person to manage the daily operations of the library, working with and in support of the director while mutually respecting each other's roles. Library boards typically have a great deal of authority over the budget process, including approving expenditures and moving money between line items. Library boards must be mindful that they adopt public policy for a public service. They should take care to avoid writing policies that are reactionary or punitive. Instead, policy development should keep community interests at the forefront. And once adopted by the board, library staff then work to carry out the policies and communicate them to the public. Planning is another important function of the board and should be approached as a continuous process. Planning leads boards to explore possibilities and opportunities, basing decisions on community input and packaging service in response to community needs. And finally, Library boards are responsible for evaluating service and advocating for advancement. The board helps determine whether the community is satisfied with library programming and services, and one of the most effective ways to gauge satisfaction with library service is by evaluating the library director's job performance. Actually, they should be evaluating their own performance as trustees as well. In exercising this role as advocates, boards are pushing for increased and improved funding. They are seeking technology advancements. They are fostering community relations and supporting the staff in terms of salaries, benefits, and working conditions. So even though the board delegates the day-to-day management to the director, the board still retains its responsibility to ensure that the library succeeds and prospers. As you continue in your library career, we want to encourage you to be mindful of the connections between library management and library standards. The state library prescribes service standards for Iowa's public libraries. The document you see on the slide, In Service to Iowa, Public Library Standards, is an important resource for boards, directors, and staff. On this slide, you'll see just a handful of standards that speak to how the board conducts business. This is not by any means all of the board-related standards. I'll call your attention to standard number 8. All members of the board participate in continuing education each year. There is no shortage of board education topics or opportunities, so just ask us at the State Library about board education options. We're here to provide that. So when boards fulfill these and other responsibilities, they are absolutely helping to ensure that the library is meeting governing and operational standards. Now let's turn to the director's role in the library operations. While the board has governing authority over the library, the director has management authority. Essentially, library directors are managing these things. In a big enough city, library directors are hiring, supervising, and evaluating staff. They are drafting policies for the board's review and adoption. They are often putting together the budget proposal. They are helping to implement the policies that the board adopts. They are overseeing spending and making sure that they're keeping pace with the spending of the budget throughout the year. Library directors act as a technical advisor to the board, again, managing those daily operations and overseeing all that is involved in managing staff, the collection, the facility, the technology, and the budget. Here's a summary of standards that are related to the director's responsibility as a library manager. Again, as we looked at the standards related to how the board does its business, this is not an exhaustive list of director-related standards. This slide only shows a handful of management duties that directors should be doing. From providing those financial statements sent from City Hall, providing those statements at board meetings, to making sure that newly appointed trustees receive an orientation to their jobs as board members, to participating in our endorsement academy programs. When directors fulfill these and other management duties, they are definitely helping to ensure that the library is meeting management standards. Now to look at the role of the support staff in library operations. Staff have a crucial role to play in the library's operations. Depending on the size of the city, there may be support staff who are in a position to hire, supervise, and evaluate others. They certainly are responsible for ordering books and materials, for checking them out and restocking the shelves. Support staff will be working with the management and boards in helping to meet library standards. We hope that support staff is participating in continuing education. Support staff need to be confident in making suggestions for improvement, confident in asking questions, and respectful of the overall board governance director management process. And of course, support staff are there on site, meeting and greeting the public every day, leading people to their next great read, and providing great customer service. We looked at standards connected to the board's responsibilities and standards connected to the director's responsibilities. Well, this slide shows just a few standards that are staff related. Not an exhaustive list by any means, but you can see that this slide encourages staff to participate in continuing education. It's quite common for the support staff to maintain the library's website, to promote the library's online products and teach patrons how to best take advantage of those online resources. It's the library staff that provides interlibrary loan service. And as you can see, the entire Chapter 7 from the Standards booklet is titled Library Programming and Community Relations. There are so many activities prescribed in that chapter that have obvious and logical involvement for library staff, from providing in-library programming to community outreach programming, to perhaps repackaging annual reports, creating exhibits, displays, and bulletin boards. Maybe it's writing newsletters or newspaper articles or keeping up with social media messaging. It could even be that support staff are making presentations to community groups and organizations. So when staff fulfill these and other duties, they help to ensure that the library is meeting programming and community relation standards. And last but not least, a look at the relationships to the library from friends groups and patrons and the community. What role do all of these people play? In a word, advocacy. Remember that the library board is the legal authority, certainly in cooperation with city government, always in compliance with the law. But library friends groups and users and community members have to understand that the library board is responsible and the legal authority for decision making. The library board has responsibility for long-range planning and for setting the service direction for the library. So a friends group is there really to help support the direction that the board has set. Friends groups and foundation members need to work together to support library services and programs, as do community members. They all need to understand how the library is funded, because understanding how the library is funded helps them to explain how crucial their tax dollars are. They all need to understand how libraries are funded so that their own fundraising efforts are most effective. Friends groups, patrons, and community members need to be confident enough and yet respectful enough to offer input, to ask questions, and certainly to respect the process and have that understanding of how the library is governed by the board and managed by the director and management staff. In a word, we want friends groups, foundation members, patrons, and community members in general to contribute in very positive ways by supporting the library as citizen advocates, being sure to speak up on behalf of the library and its vital role in the community, speaking up to local, state, and federal legislators. Well, it's good to know that all of those players on the city library team, the city government, the library board, directors, staff, and community members, they all have some great support organizations to turn to for advice, for training, and sometimes just to talk. So in this last segment of this module, we'll take a look at these support organizations, and we'll start with our own agency, the State Library of Iowa. The State Library has developed this endorsement academy, which you are taking part in, showing that continuing education and training is an important part of what we do. Our staff also provides consulting services for library staff and boards. Often by extension, we'll talk with Iowa's mayors, with city clerks, with city council members too, as questions come up regarding the library's place in city government. Our agency prescribes service standards for Iowa's public libraries. We provide the structure for interlibrary loan through SILO and the Iowa Shares program. We administer the Bridges ebook service. We also administer the State Data Center and the State Law Library. There's so much to learn about state library services and programs. Come back to our website often to find resources for Iowa libraries and to reach out to our staff too. Just click or call. The Iowa Library Association is our professional library organization. Established in 1890, ILA is the second oldest professional library association in the country. With approximately 1,300 members, ILA is comprised of library managers and staff, trustees, businesses, and friends groups. Belonging to ILA does require a paid membership. Dues are on a sliding scale based on salary and run the calendar year. ILA provides an annual conference each fall. ILA provides conference scholarships and pays for the services of professional lobbyists. Explore ILA's website to learn more. ALA, the American Library Association, is the oldest and largest library association in the world. Founded in 1876 in Philadelphia, ALA's mission is to provide leadership for the development, promotion, and improvement of library and information services and to the profession of librarianship in order to enhance learning and ensure access to information for all. One crucial role for ALA is to advocate for all types of libraries, whether public school or colleges, helping to raise awareness that libraries are a public good and an essential service. Another vital role for ALA is to provide a national and unified defense of intellectual freedom. ALA sponsors an annual conference, offers library management books and promotional materials. Its monthly magazine is titled American Libraries. Belonging to ALA requires a paid membership. Dues are on a sliding scale based on salary and run the calendar year. Explore ALA's website to learn more. PLA is the Public Library Association, a subdivision of the American Library Association, and like its name implies, PLA has the needs and interests of public libraries front and center. Founded in 1944, PLA is the largest association dedicated to supporting the unique and evolving needs of public library professionals. With 10,000 members nationwide, library managers and staff across the country look to PLA for conferences, grant opportunities, publications, and promotional materials. Its monthly magazine is entitled Public Libraries. Belonging to PLA first requires an ALA membership. PLA dues are in addition to ALA dues and run the calendar year. Explore PLA's website to learn more. United for Libraries is another subdivision of the American Library Association. United for Libraries is a national network that supports the interests and needs of library boards, friends groups, and foundations. United for Libraries is essentially an advocacy network, providing resources and training to those important library support groups. Their website states, "No one has a stronger voice for libraries than those who use them, raise money for them, and govern them." By uniting these voices, library supporters everywhere will become a real force to be reckoned with at the local, state, and national levels. Some of the resources available at United for Libraries are free, but some material is behind a paywall, accessible through a paid membership. Explore United for Libraries to learn more. This concludes this learning module within the Foundations course, the Library, City, Team, and Support Organizations. Good luck as you continue the endorsement program, and be sure to reach out to us at the State Library with any questions. Thanks for watching.